Quite a picture seeing someone enjoying a book out here. Everything all right?
Yes, perfectly fine. Though I must say, that suit is quite a sight on this road.
The Mercedes screeched to a halt, red dust billowing around its polished wheels. Prince Marcus stared at the girl sitting on the cracked pavement, her thin frame wrapped in faded cloth, a plastic cup trembling in her outstretched hand. "Move along," his driver barked. But Marcus couldn't look away. There was something in her eyes, not desperation, but dignity. Something that pierced through his world of marble floors and air-conditioned rooms. "Wait," he heard himself say. He didn't know it then, but that single word would unravel everything he thought he knew about power, family, and the crown he'd spent 40 years waiting to wear. This is the story of the Prince of Red Dust. Don't forget to share the video so that the more watch the video it will make me drop another story watch to end. If you're hooked on this story of power, secrets, and redemption, like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss what happens next. Comment below. The sun climbed over the town of Riverside like a flaming orange coin, promising another scorching day. The heat in coastal Kenya wasn't like heat elsewhere. It pressed down on your shoulders like a heavy, wet blanket. By 8 in the morning, the red dust on the roads was already dry, swirling in small tornadoes whenever a car passed. Inside the royal estate, however, coolness reigned. The compound was the largest in the entire county, painted brilliant white that hurt your eyes in the sun. Tall pillars supported a roof of imported green tiles. A high fence with sharp metal spikes surrounded everything, keeping out thieves and common people. In his enormous bedroom, Prince Marcus woke without a smile. He woke with a frown etched deep into his handsome face. He pushed off his expensive duvet and sat up slowly. The air conditioner hummed loudly, blowing frigid air onto his face. Marcus shivered but didn't turn it off. He liked the cold. It reminded him that he was wealthy. Only rich people could afford to run a generator all night just for air conditioning. Marcus walked to his mirror. He was a striking man, nearly 40 years old, with broad shoulders and a carefully trimmed beard. But his eyes were restless, darting around as if searching for something he'd lost long ago. "Another day," Marcus whispered to his reflection. "Another day of being just a prince." He hated that word, prince. To him, it meant second place. It meant waiting. It meant asking his father for money to fuel his Range Rover. It meant requesting permission to travel to Nairobi or Dubai. Marcus felt like a caged lion, powerful but trapped. He showered with hot water and scented soap, then dressed in a crisp blue designer shirt. He strapped on his heavy gold watch. It gleamed in the light. He looked like a king, but he knew he wasn't one yet. Marcus descended to the dining room where the table could seat 20 people. Only one other person sat there, King Daniel, his father. King Daniel was old now. His hair had turned white as cotton. His face showed the map of all the years he'd ruled Riverside. He ate slowly, his hand shaking slightly as he lifted a slice of sweet potato to his mouth. "Good morning, father," Marcus said, pulling out a chair. The king looked up, his kind brown eyes meeting his son's. "Good morning, my son. Did you sleep well?" "Fine," Marcus lied, grabbing a piece of bread. "Father, about the contract for the new shopping center." The king sighed, setting down his fork. "Marcus, it's morning. Can we not eat in peace before discussing business?" "It's not about business, father," Marcus said, his voice tightening. "It's about respect. The contractors keep asking me questions. They want to know who's in charge. When I tell them I need to consult my father, they laugh." "Let them laugh," King Daniel said calmly. "A wise man doesn't care about the laughter of fools. You are my son. That should be enough." "It's not enough." Marcus slammed his hand on the table. The silverware rattled. A servant standing by the wall jumped, then stared at the floor, afraid to breathe. "I'm a grown man, father," Marcus continued, lowering his voice but keeping the anger. "I should be running this estate. You're tired. Look at you. Your hand shakes when you hold your fork. Why don't you rest?" Let me take the burden. King Daniel studied his son for a long moment. He saw the hunger for power in Marcus's eyes, and it made his heart heavy. The crown isn't a shoe you simply put on because you like the style, the king said softly. It's a heavy responsibility. It requires patience and wisdom. You have fire, Marcus, but you lack the water to cool it. I've waited 40 years for the water. Marcus stood abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the tile floor. I'm going out. Where are you going? The king asked. Does it matter? Marcus snapped. I'm just the prince. I have nothing important to do. He stormed past the beautiful paintings and leopard sculptures, out to where his black Range Rover was parked. His driver, a young man named Thomas, jumped up from a bench. Good morning, sir. Ready to. Give me the keys, Marcus demanded. But sir, the king said I should. Give me the keys or you're fired. Marcus shouted. Thomas quickly handed them over, his hands trembling. Yes, sir. Sorry, sir. Marcus climbed into the driver's seat, started the powerful engine, and slammed the door. He sped toward the gates. The guards scrambled to open them before he crashed through. He roared onto the main road, red dust flying behind his vehicle, coating the roadside stalls where women sold roasted corn and bottled water. Marcus turned up his music loud, trying to drown out his father's voice, trying to silence his own thoughts. He needed a plan. He couldn't wait for his father to die of old age. That could take another decade. By then, Marcus would be an old man himself. No, he needed to be king now. He picked up his phone and dialed. Jackson, he said when someone answered. Meet me at the Palm Hotel. Now. The Palm Hotel was the finest establishment in Riverside, which meant it had a generator that worked most of the time and cold drinks. Painted yellow and green, it sat on the edge of town where the pavement ended and the red dust began. Marcus sat in the back corner of the dimly lit bar. The curtains were drawn against the heat. A television in the corner showed a football match with the sound off. Jackson walked in 10 minutes later. He was Marcus's best friend since primary school, tall and very thin with a face that reminded people of a rat. He always wore dark sunglasses, even indoors. Jackson didn't come from wealth like Marcus, but he enjoyed expensive things. He especially enjoyed spending Marcus's money. My prince, Jackson said, spreading his arms wide in mock ceremony. Long may you reign. Shut up, Marcus grumbled. I'm not reigning over anything. I'm just sitting here drinking warm soda. Jackson sat down and waved at the waiter. 2 cold beers and bring pepper soup. Fish, not goat. He turned back to Marcus, lowering his sunglasses. What happened? Did the old man say no again? He treats me like a child, Marcus said, clenching his fist on the table. He talks about wisdom and patience. I'm sick of patience, Jackson. I want what's mine. Jackson leaned in close. He smelled of cigarettes and cheap cologne. You know, Marcus, there's a way. What way? You have to force his hand, Jackson whispered. Make him want to step down. How? He's stubborn as an ox, Marcus said. He thinks God chose him to rule forever. Jackson looked around to make sure no one was listening. The bar was empty except for a man sleeping in a chair in the far corner. Listen, Jackson said quietly. My uncle works in the records office in the city. He found something interesting. An old file. What kind of file? A marriage certificate, Jackson said, showing yellow teeth in a smile. Your father and Queen Rachel. Marcus frowned. So, he married my mother. So what? Yes, Jackson said slowly. But the date on that certificate. It's after you were born. Marcus paused, trying to do the math in his head. That doesn't make sense. I'm the firstborn. My mother is the queen. That's what we all think, Jackson said. But there are rumors, Marcus. Village gossip. The old women in the market whisper things. What do they whisper? Marcus asked, his voice low. They say that before your mother came along, the king had another wife, a poor girl from the village. Her name was Nina. They say he loved her deeply, which made the elders angry because she was common. And they say she got pregnant first. Marcus felt a cold sensation in his stomach. If she had a child, and that child was a boy, then that child would be the rightful heir. Not me. Exactly, Jackson finished the sentence. Marcus laughed nervously. That's ridiculous. If there was another brother, where is he? Where is this Nina? That's the mystery, Jackson said. They vanished. Poof, gone. Your mother, Queen Rachel, appeared on the scene, and suddenly the first wife disappeared. Some people say she died. Others say she went mad. Marcus sat back in his chair, feeling dizzy. If this was true, his entire life was a lie. If there was an older brother somewhere, Marcus was nothing. Why are you telling me this? Marcus asked. Because knowledge is power, Jackson said. If we can find out the truth, we can use it. If the first wife is dead, good, we destroy the evidence. But if she's alive, or if her son is alive, we must find them before anyone else does. And then what? Marcus asked. Jackson made a slicing motion across his throat with his finger. Marcus stared at his friend. He'd always known Jackson had a dark side, but murder? I can't do that, Marcus stammered. Do you want to be king? Jackson asked. Or do you want to serve a stranger? Marcus thought about the estate, the cars, the way people bowed to his father. He thought about losing it all to some unknown brother. The anger returned, hotter than before. Where do we start? Marcus asked. Jackson grinned. There's a woman living in the wasteland near the old quarry. They call her Nina the Mad Woman. She's been there about 15 years, the same time your supposed brother would have been born. She speaks nonsense mostly, but sometimes she sings royal songs. Marcus nodded slowly. The wasteland. We go tonight, Jackson said. We scare her. Make her talk. If she knows something, we'll know. Okay, Marcus said. Tonight. The waiter arrived with steaming bowls of pepper soup. The spicy aroma filled the air, but Marcus had lost his appetite. He was thinking about a brother he never knew existed and a crown he was willing to kill for. The wasteland wasn't a place normal people visited. It was a stretch of abandoned land on the edge of Riverside where the quarry had once operated. Huge trees with twisted roots grew among piles of trash, old broken cars, rusty refrigerators, and mountains of plastic bags rotting in the sun. Deep past the garbage, where the trees grew close together, there was a small clearing. In the middle stood a hut made of cracked red mud and a roof of old palm fronds and plastic sheets tied down with vines. This was Nina's home. Nina sat on a log outside her hut, looking like someone who'd lived 100 years of suffering. Her hair was thick with dirt, matted into long rope-like dreadlocks hanging down her back. Her dark skin was leathery from the sun. She wore what could only be described as rags stitched together with colored threads. To the villagers, she was frightening. They threw stones if she came too close to the market. They told their children, "Behave or Nina will get you." But Nina didn't hurt children. She mostly ate papayas and mangoes she found in the bush. Sometimes she caught giant snails and roasted them over a small fire. Today, Nina sat staring at her fire, humming a gentle tune, the kind a mother sings to put a baby to sleep. Sleep, my little one. Sleep, my prince. The moon is watching you. The stars are your guardians. She stopped suddenly, tilting her head. Her eyes, usually cloudy and confused, looked sharp for a moment. Where is he? She whispered, looking around the empty clearing. Michael. Michael, come and eat. There was no one there, just the chirping of crickets and the call of a hornbill. Nina began to cry. She didn't know why exactly, just that she felt a hole in her heart, a space where something precious used to be. She remembered a face, a tiny face, a baby laughing, and then darkness, a bitter taste in her mouth. She stood and began pacing around her hut with a limp. Her left leg had been broken long ago and never healed properly. They took him, she muttered to the trees. The lady with the red lips. She took my heart. The sky above began to darken. Grey clouds rolled in, covering the sun. Wind picked up, shaking the palm leaves. It was going to rain heavily. Nina didn't mind rain. Sometimes she felt the sky was crying with her. She crawled into her hut where she kept her simple possessions, a mat on the floor, a pot for water, and a pile of things she'd collected, shiny stones, bird feathers, pieces of colored glass. To anyone else, trash. To Nina, treasures. When the king comes, she whispered, picking up a blue piece of glass, I'll give him this diamond. Thunder rumbled long and low, like drums beating underground. Nina curled up on her mat and closed her eyes. In her dreams, she wasn't dirty or mad. She was beautiful, wearing a golden dress, sitting on a high chair. Beside her sat a man who looked at her with such love it made her warm inside. Daniel, she whispered in her sleep. Suddenly, a loud crack woke her, the sound of a dry branch breaking under a heavy foot. Nina sat up, heart pounding. That wasn't an animal. Animals walked softly. This was a person. Or people. She heard voices. Men's voices. Coming closer. This place stinks, an arrogant voice said. Just keep walking, Prince, another voice replied. The hut's just ahead. Nina crawled to the corner of her hut and grabbed a rusty machete she used for cutting yams. She held it tight with both hands. She was scared but also angry. This was her home, the only safe place she had. The footsteps stopped right outside her door. A bright flashlight beam cut through cracks in the mud wall. Hey, crazy woman, the voice shouted. Come out. We have gifts for you. Nina knew that voice was lying. Gifts didn't come with shouting. Gifts didn't come in the darkness. She stayed silent, pressing her back against the cold wall. Maybe she's dead, the first voice said. She's not dead. I can smell her, the second voice laughed cruelly. Nina's grip on the machete tightened. She wouldn't let them take her. She wouldn't let them take her baby, even though she couldn't remember where her baby was. In her confused mind, he was sleeping right behind her. She had to protect him. Come out, the voice roared, and a heavy boot kicked the door. Mud dust fell from the ceiling. Nina let out a low growl like a mother leopard protecting her cubs. She was ready to fight. While Marcus and Jackson crept through the wasteland, life at the royal estate continued. In the servants' quarters behind the main kitchen, a young man named Michael was washing his face. Michael was about 17 years old, tall and thin with short hair and very dark skin. He had a calm face, but his eyes looked older than his years. They were the eyes of someone who'd seen too much hardship too young. Michael was an orphan. He'd grown up in a crowded children's home in the city of Mombasa. He didn't know his mother or father. The nuns told him he'd been found in a basket near the gate when he was a baby. 2 months ago, he'd walked all the way to Riverside looking for work. The head cook, a kind woman named Mama Grace, had taken pity on him and given him a job washing dishes and sweeping yards. Michael worked hard. He never complained. He woke at 4 every morning. But inside, he felt strange. Since arriving in Riverside, he felt at home. The red dust felt familiar under his feet. The smell of coconut rice from the kitchen felt like a memory. Tonight, Michael was exhausted. He'd spent the whole day scrubbing blackened pots from the king's lunch. Michael, a voice called. It was Mama Grace, a large woman with a colorful head wrap. Yes, Mama, Michael answered, drying his face. The king is asking for tea. The night guard is busy. Can you take it to his study? Be very quiet. He's not feeling well. Yes, Mama. Michael quickly put on a clean shirt and arranged the tea tray carefully. Teapot, cup, small plate of biscuits. He carried it toward the main house. The estate was quiet at night, with only the hum of air conditioners. Michael walked up the wide marble staircase, feeling small in the grand house. He looked at pictures on the wall, portraits of past kings, all looking fierce and proud. He reached the king's study and knocked gently. "Enter," a weak voice said. Michael opened the door. King Daniel sat in his armchair looking at a photo album. He looked very old tonight, his face pale. "Your tea, your highness," Michael said, placing the tray on the table. "Thank you, boy," the king said without looking up. He was touching a photograph. Michael glanced at it. A beautiful young woman laughing, her head thrown back. She wasn't wearing royal clothes, just a simple village dress. "Who is she, sir?" Michael asked before he could stop himself. He gasped, covering his mouth. "I'm sorry, your highness. I shouldn't ask questions." The king looked up. He didn't appear angry, just sad. "It's okay," the king smiled weakly. "Her name was Nina. She was very special to me. She had a spirit like fire and water mixed together." "She's beautiful," Michael said. "She was," the king sighed. "She's gone now. Long gone." The king tried to reach for the teacup, but his hand shook violently. The cup rattled on the saucer. He couldn't lift it. "Let me help you, sir," Michael said, stepping forward. With gentle hands, he lifted the cup to the king's lips. The king took a sip. "Thank you." He looked at Michael's hands. "You have strong hands. Working hands." Michael smiled shyly. "I work hard, sir." The king studied Michael's face, frowning slightly. "Have we met before, boy? You look familiar." "I work in the kitchen, sir. You might have seen me sweeping." "No," the king murmured. "It's in the eyes. You have eyes like—" He looked back at Nina's photo, then at Michael again. Suddenly, the door banged open. Queen Rachel stood in the doorway wearing a long red nightgown, her face covered in thick makeup even at night. She looked furious. "What is this rat doing here?" she screamed, pointing at Michael. Michael jumped back, nearly dropping the tray. I brought tea, my queen." "Get out!" Rachel shouted. "How dare you enter the king's private room? Are you a thief? Do you want to steal?" "No, madam, I swear," Michael cried. "Rachel, calm down," the king said, his voice finding strength. "The boy was helping me. My hands were shaking." "You have guards to help you," Rachel snapped at her husband. "You lower yourself by letting these dirty street children touch you." She turned to Michael. "Get out before I have you whipped." Michael bowed hastily. "Yes, my queen. Sorry, my queen." He ran from the room, his heart pounding. He hated Queen Rachel. She was cruel to everyone, but she seemed to hate him specifically. Every time she looked at him, it was like she was seeing a ghost. Michael ran down the stairs and out into the cool night air. He needed to breathe. He leaned against a pillar in the courtyard, trying to calm down. Something sparkled in the dirt, reflecting moonlight. Michael bent down and brushed away red dust. It was a bead, but not a normal plastic bead. This was large, heavy, made of red coral with a creamy white swirl in the middle. It looked exactly like the beads the king wore around his neck, but ancient, as if it had been buried and the rain had just washed it up. Michael picked it up. It felt warm in his hand. A strange feeling washed over him. Sadness mixed with belonging. "Why does this feel like it's mine?" he wondered. He remembered the woman in the king's photo wearing beads just like this. Michael looked around to make sure no one was watching, then quickly pocketed the bead. He didn't know why, but he knew he couldn't let Queen Rachel see it. It was a secret. A secret between him and the red dust of the estate. As he walked back to his room, he heard a car engine. He looked toward the gate and saw Prince Marcus's black Range Rover driving in, covered in mud. Marcus and Jackson got out, looking sweaty and frustrated. "That witch wasn't there," Marcus was saying angrily. "We checked. The hut was empty." "She's hiding in the bush," Jackson replied. "We'll burn it down next time. Flush her out like a rat." Michael froze in the shadows. Burn it down? Were they talking about Nina? He watched them go inside, his heart racing. He touched the bead in his pocket. He realized the estate wasn't just a place of work. It was a place of secrets, danger, and wicked plans. And somehow, he was right in the middle of it. The next morning, the estate woke to roosters crowing and the smell of frying fish. The sun burned brighter than the day before, evaporating dew from the hibiscus flowers in the garden. Michael was already awake. He'd slept poorly. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Queen Rachel's angry face and King Daniel's sad eyes. And he felt the weight of the coral bead in his pocket, heavy like a stone full of secrets. He was sweeping the long driveway when he saw Elder Solomon arriving. Elder Solomon was the chief spiritual advisor of Riverside, a small man who walked with powerful strides. He wore a red cap with an eagle feather, and rattles around his ankles that made a ch-ch-ch sound with every step. Elder Solomon stopped when he saw Michael. He didn't walk past like other important people. He stopped and stared. "Good morning, wise one," Michael said, bowing low. Elder Solomon didn't answer immediately. He sniffed the air, his nose twitching like a dog catching a scent. He walked around Michael in a slow circle. "You carry something, boy," Elder Solomon said, his voice like dry leaves crunching. "Not a burden on your back, but a weight in your spirit." Michael's hand went instinctively to his pocket. I'm just sweeping, sir." "Don't lie to the eyes of the ancestors," Elder Solomon said sharply, pointing his staff at Michael's chest. "There's a fire around you. A royal fire." Michael was terrified. Did the elder know about the bead? Was he in trouble? Before he could answer, a guard shouted from the porch, "Hey, priest! The king is waiting." Elder Solomon lowered his staff, giving Michael one last piercing look. "We will speak again, child of dust." He turned and walked up the stairs, ankle rattles shaking. Michael let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. He quickly finished sweeping and ran to the back of the kitchen. He sat on an overturned bucket and pulled out the bead. In daylight, it looked even more special. The red coral seemed to have veins running through it, like living blood. He rubbed his thumb over the smooth surface. "What are you doing hiding there?" Michael jumped. It was Mama Grace holding a large knife and basket of cassava. "Nothing, Mama. Just resting," Michael said quickly, hiding the bead in his fist. Mama Grace looked suspicious. "You look guilty, Michael. Did you steal meat from the pot?" "No, Mama, I swear." "Well, get up. Queen Rachel is in a terrible mood today, shouting at everyone. If she catches you idle, she'll skin you alive." "Why is she angry?" Michael asked, standing. "Who knows with that woman?" Mama Grace whispered. "She's like a volcano, always rumbling. They say she had a bad dream last night, screamed so loud she woke the guards." Michael remembered the bead. Did she dream about this? Just then, loud commotion erupted from the front gate. Michael and Mama Grace ran to look. A group of rough-looking young men gathered at the gate wearing torn jeans and dirty t-shirts. Some had scars on their faces. They were known as street boys, local thugs who did dirty work for money. The head guard was trying to stop them. "You cannot come in here. This is the king's house. We have business with the prince," one thug shouted. He had a gold tooth and a red bandana tied around his arm. Prince Marcus walked out of the house looking annoyed. "Let them in," he told the guard. The guard opened the gate reluctantly. The thugs swaggered in like they owned the place. Marcus led them to a corner of the garden, far from the main windows. Michael pretended to sweep near the bushes so he could hear. "Is it set?" Marcus asked in a low voice. "Yes, boss," the gold-toothed thug said. "We bought the fuel, 5 gallons. Tonight we light up the wasteland." "Good," Marcus said, handing the man a thick envelope of cash. "Make sure it burns completely. I want nothing left. Not a stick, not a bone." "And the woman?" the thug asked. If she's inside. Well, accidents happen, Marcus said coldly. Just make sure she never speaks again. Michael felt ice in his veins. They were going to kill Nina. Burn her alive in her hut. He wanted to scream, but he knew if he made a sound, they'd kill him too. He slowly backed away, step by step, until he was behind the kitchen wall. Then he ran. He ran to his room and grabbed a small flashlight and a machete he used for cutting grass. He didn't know what he was going to do, but he knew he couldn't let Nina die. Inside the estate, in the private consultation room, the air was thick with burning incense. King Daniel sat on a low stool facing Elder Solomon, who threw a handful of cowrie shells onto a leopard skin rug. He stared at the pattern they made, frowning. What do the ancestors say, Solomon? King Daniel asked, his voice trembling. They are angry, my king, Elder Solomon said. Very angry. There's a stain on your house. A lie that has grown too big. What lie? Is it about Marcus? It's deeper than Marcus, Elder Solomon said, picking up a shell and holding it to his ear. I hear a voice crying in the wilderness. A mother's voice calling for justice. The king closed his eyes. Nina. It's always Nina. Is she dead, Solomon? Tell me the truth. Did she die in the wasteland all those years ago? The shells are confused, Elder Solomon admitted. One says death, one says life. It's like she's walking between two worlds. But there's something else, a seed. A seed. A child, my king. A son. King Daniel grabbed the priest's arm. My son? The baby she took with her. He is close, Elder Solomon whispered. Very close. I feel his presence. He walks in your shadow, but you don't see him. Where? Where is he? Open your eyes, Daniel. Look at those who serve you. Look at those you ignore. The diamond is often hidden in mud. Suddenly, the door flew open. Queen Rachel marched in, her wig slightly crooked, looking frantic. Daniel, what are you doing with this old wizard? She shrieked. We have guests arriving from Nairobi. You need to get dressed. Woman, leave us, the king shouted. It was the first time in years he'd raised his voice at her. Rachel was shocked, taking a step back. I said leave, the king roared, standing up, looking taller and stronger than he had in months. I am the king, and I'm consulting with the ancestors about the wickedness in my own home. Rachel turned pale. She looked at Elder Solomon, who was smiling, a small, knowing smile. She turned and ran from the room. She knows, Elder Solomon said quietly. Her fear smells like rotten meat. We must act fast, my king. Tonight, the spirits say. Tonight is the turning point. The sun began to set, painting the sky bruised purple. Thunder rumbled in the distance, warning of another storm. Michael waited until Mama Grace was busy frying plantains, then slipped out the back door. He climbed over the low wall at the back of the compound and dropped into tall grass. He ran past the market where women packed up their stalls, past the church where the choir practiced, until his chest burned and his legs felt like jelly. He reached the edge of the wasteland. It looked like a giant mouth waiting to swallow him. Trees swayed in the wind, branches creaking like old bones. He turned on his small flashlight. The beam was weak, cutting a thin yellow line through darkness. Nina, he whispered. Nina. He followed the path he knew, stumbling over roots, swatting mosquitoes. Up ahead, he saw flickering light. Fire. No, too small. A torch. He stopped and crouched. Through the leaves, he saw the thugs, 4 of them standing around Nina's hut, laughing and drinking cheap liquor from small packets. Is she in there? The leader asked. Yes, I heard her singing that crazy song, another said. Good. Pour the fuel. Michael watched in horror as they splashed gasoline all over the dry thatch roof. The sharp chemical smell drifted toward him. Hey, witch! The leader yelled. Prince Marcus sends his greetings. He struck a match. The flame flared. Michael didn't think. He didn't plan. He just acted. "No!" he screamed, charging from the bushes, waving his machete like a wild spirit. The thugs were startled. They dropped the match. It fell into mud and fizzled out. "Who's that?" One thug squinted into darkness. "Just a boy," the leader laughed. "Look, a little hero." Michael stood between the thugs and the hut, shaking but holding the machete high. "Leave her alone. Go away." "Or what?" the leader sneered, pulling out a long dagger. "You want to die too? Tie him up. Throw him inside. We'll burn them both." Two thugs lunged at Michael. He swung the machete, but he wasn't a fighter. One thug grabbed his arm and twisted. The machete fell. The other punched him in the stomach. Michael doubled over, gasping. They grabbed his arms and legs. "Open the door." They kicked the hut door open and threw Michael inside. He landed hard on the dirt floor. "Michael," a voice whispered from the corner. It was Nina, huddled against the wall, holding her bundle of rags. She didn't look scared, she looked sad. "Mama," Michael groaned. "We have to get out." Outside, the leader laughed. "Okay, let's try again. Light it up." He lit another match and threw it perfectly onto the roof. Whoosh! The gasoline caught instantly. Flames raced up the sides of the hut. Heat became sudden and intense. Smoke poured through roof cracks. "Burn, witch, burn!" the thugs chanted. Inside, Michael coughed, smoke stinging his eyes. He crawled to Nina. "Mama, move. We have to break the wall." Nina looked at him. For a moment, her madness seemed to clear. She looked at his face in the orange firelight. "You came," she said softly. "You came back for me." "I'll always come back," Michael choked out. "Now help me." He grabbed a heavy wooden pestle from the corner and smashed it against the back wall. The mud was old and dry. A chunk fell off. "Again," Nina cried. She stood, finding strength she didn't know she had. She kicked the wall with her good leg. Crash! A hole opened. Fresh air rushed in. "Go!" Michael pushed her. "My baby!" she cried, reaching for the bundle of rags. "Leave it. I'm here," Michael shouted, grabbing her hand. "I'm here." Nina looked at the rags, then at Michael. She dropped the bundle and climbed through the hole. Michael followed just as the roof collapsed behind them in a shower of sparks. They tumbled into thick bush behind the hut, rolling down a small slope into a muddy ditch. Above them, the hut was a bonfire, flames reaching high into the night sky. The thugs cheered on the other side. "Did you hear them scream? Yeah, they're toast. Let's get the rest of our money from the prince." The thugs walked away, laughter fading into night. Michael and Nina lay in mud, breathing hard. Rain started, a gentle drizzle hissing as it hit the burning hut. Michael sat up, wiping mud from his face. "Are you okay?" Nina didn't answer. She stared at him, firelight flickering on her face. She reached out a trembling hand and touched his cheek. "Who are you?" she asked. Her voice was different now. Not the voice of a mad woman, but steady. "I'm Michael. I work at the estate." "Michael," she repeated, frowning as if trying to catch a slippery thought. "Why do I know that name?" Michael felt something digging into his leg. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the red coral bead, warm in his hand. "I found this," he said, holding it up. "At the estate. Elder Solomon said it has a royal fire." Nina gasped. She snatched the bead from his hand, held it to her chest, and closed her eyes. Suddenly she screamed, not in pain, but in memory. Images flooded her brain. The king giving her the bead, the day she gave birth, the baby. "This is mine," she whispered. "King Daniel gave it to me on our wedding night." She opened her eyes and grabbed Michael's arm, ripping his shirt sleeve. "Hey!" Michael protested. But Nina wasn't listening. She was looking at his upper arm where, just below his shoulder, was a birthmark shaped like a crescent moon, dark and distinct. Nina started to laugh, then cry, rocking back and forth. "The moon," she sobbed. "The moon mark. Daniel has it. His father had it. And my baby had it." She looked into Michael's eyes. "You're not Michael the servant. You're Prince Michael. My son." Michael felt the world spin. "Your son? But you're Nina. The village says you're mad." "I was mad," she said fiercely. "They poisoned me. Rachel put herbs in my soup to make me forget, to make me crazy so she could steal my life. But the fire woke me up. The heat burned the fog away." She stood, dirty and ragged and smelling of smoke, but she stood tall. She looked like a queen. "They tried to kill us tonight, my son. Marcus and Rachel. They know who you are. That's why they sent the fire." "Marcus?" Michael asked. "My brother." "He is no brother to you," Nina spat. "He's a viper. But we will crush his head." "What do we do?" Michael asked, feeling scared but also strong. He wasn't a nobody anymore. He was a prince. "We go to the king," Nina said. "We go to your father. He thinks we're dead. We'll show him that life is stronger than death. But the guards won't let us in. I'm just a servant to them. And you?" "I know a way," Nina said. "A secret way. Daniel showed me long ago when we were young lovers hiding from his father. There's a tunnel behind the old shrine. It leads straight into the estate garden." She held out her hand. "Come, my son. Let us go home." Michael took her hand, rough but warm. Together they turned from the burning hut and walked into the dark forest, toward the estate, toward the truth. And nothing, not fire, not poison, not guards, was going to stop them. While the wasteland burned, Queen Rachel sat in her grand bedroom painted gold and pink. She sat at her dressing table, looking in the mirror, putting on night cream. But her hands shook. The jar rattled against the glass table. "Why am I afraid?" she thought. "I'm the queen. I've won." But she didn't feel like a winner. She felt deep, cold dread in her stomach, like she'd swallowed a block of ice. Her phone buzzed on the table. She jumped. It was Jackson. "Hello." "It's done, my queen," Jackson's voice crackled. "The fire is burning bright. The hut is gone. And the occupants?" Rachel asked, her voice a whisper. "The boys said they saw two people inside. The mad woman and a boy. They didn't come out." Rachel closed her eyes. "A boy? Which boy?" "Some skinny servant. He tried to be a hero. Foolish boy." Rachel dropped the phone. "Michael." It had to be Michael. She remembered seeing him in the king's study the night before, remembered the strange look in the king's eyes when he looked at the boy. "He's gone," she told herself. "The threat is gone. My son will be king." But the dread didn't go away. Suddenly, the lights flickered, then went out. The air conditioner stopped. The room plunged into darkness. "Guards!" Rachel screamed. "Start the generator. Why is there no light?" She fumbled for a candle, lit it with trembling fingers. The small flame cast long, dancing shadows on the walls, shadows that looked like people, like a woman in rags, like a boy with sad eyes. Rachel grabbed an expensive perfume bottle and threw it at the wall. Crash. The smell of roses filled the room, but it couldn't cover the smell of her own fear. "I am the queen," she hissed into darkness. "I will not be afraid of ghosts." But deep down, she knew ghosts were the hardest enemies to fight. You couldn't shoot them. You couldn't burn them. They always came back. Deep in the wasteland, far from the burning hut, Michael and Nina, now remembering herself as the true queen, were moving slowly. The rain had stopped, but the ground was slippery mud. "Are you sure about this tunnel?" Michael asked, holding Nina's hand to steady her. She was limping badly. "I'm sure," Nina said, her voice weak but determined. Daniel showed it to me. It was an escape route for the old kings during wars. It starts behind the big baobab tree near the stream. They reached the stream, swollen with rain, rushing loudly over stones. A giant baobab tree stood on the bank, its roots thick as pythons. Here, Nina pointed. Hidden between two large roots was a small opening covered with vines and spiderwebs. It looked like an animal den. We have to crawl, Nina said. Michael looked at the dark hole. He hated small spaces. Is it safe? What about snakes? Snakes are better than what awaits us if we go back, Nina said grimly. She got on hands and knees and crawled in. Michael took a deep breath and followed. The tunnel was narrow and smelled of damp earth and bat droppings. It was pitch black. Michael could feel worms squishing under his hands. He wanted to scream but kept going, following the sound of his mother's breathing. They crawled for what felt like hours. Michael's knees were scraped and bleeding, his back ached. We're close, Nina whispered ahead. The air is changing. Suddenly, the tunnel widened. Michael could stand. He felt stone under his feet instead of dirt. This is the old cellar, Nina said. It leads to the wine storage under the main house. They found a wooden ladder rotting against the wall and climbed up. At the top was a heavy trapdoor. Push, Nina commanded. They both pushed. The door groaned and lifted. Dust fell on their faces. They climbed out into a room filled with old crates and bottles, dimly lit by moonlight through a small high window. We're inside, Michael breathed. He couldn't believe it. They were in the estate. Now comes the hard part, Nina said, smoothing her ragged dress and trying to wipe soot from her face, but it just smeared. We have to get to the king's bedroom without being seen. If Rachel sees us first. She won't, Michael said firmly, picking up an empty wine bottle. I'll protect you. Nina smiled, the first genuine smile Michael had seen on her face. You have your father's courage. They opened the cellar door into a back hallway near the kitchens. It was quiet. The generator was still off. They crept down the hall. Michael knew the way. He'd scrubbed these floors 100 times. This way, he whispered. They turned a corner and almost bumped into a guard sleeping on a chair, his gun resting on his lap, snoring loudly. Michael put a finger to his lips. They tiptoed past. They reached the main staircase, wide and grand. Up there, Nina pointed to big double doors at the end of the hall. They started to climb, but as they reached the middle of the stairs, the lights came back on. Buzz. The generator roared to life outside. The crystal chandelier above blazed with light. Hey! Who's there? A voice shouted from the top of the stairs. It was Queen Rachel standing at the railing, looking down. When she saw them, her eyes bulged. She looked like she'd seen demons. You! She screamed. You're dead. You're supposed to be dead. I am very much alive, Rachel, Nina said, her voice ringing out clear and strong. And I've come for what you stole. Guards. Rachel shrieked. Guards. Assassins. Kill them. Kill them now. Heavy boots thundered down the hallway. The guards were coming. Run. Michael yelled, grabbing his mother's hand and pulling her up the stairs toward the king's room. Stop them. Rachel shouted, chasing after them. Marcus appeared from a side door holding a pistol. He saw Michael and Nina running toward his father's room. No, you don't. Marcus yelled, aiming the gun. Michael didn't stop. He shoulder-slammed the heavy door of the king's bedroom. It burst open. They fell inside onto soft carpet. King Daniel was sitting up in bed, reading by lamplight. He looked up, startled. What is the meaning of this? He demanded. Michael scrambled to his feet, helping his mother up. Father! Michael cried. King Daniel looked at the dirty boy, then at the ragged woman beside him. The woman lifted her head. The king dropped his book. Nina, he whispered. The room went silent. The only sound was Michael and Nina's heavy breathing. King Daniel slowly got out of bed and walked toward them, eyes wide with disbelief. He reached out a shaking hand. Nina, is it truly you? My spirit has been telling me. It's me, Daniel. Nina wept, falling to her knees. I have returned from the grave. Just then Marcus and Rachel burst into the room, guards right behind them, guns raised. Shoot them. Marcus screamed. They're trying to kill the king. The guards hesitated, looking at the king, then at the intruders, confused. Lower your weapons, King Daniel commanded. His voice wasn't weak anymore. It was the voice of a lion. If anyone fires a shot in this room, I will have their head. The guards lowered their guns instantly. Father, don't listen to them, Marcus shouted, waving his pistol. She's a witch. She bewitched you years ago, and now she's back to finish the job. And that boy, he's a thief. Be quiet, Marcus, the king snapped. He looked at Nina. Tell me, where have you been? Why did you leave me? I didn't leave you, Nina said, glaring at Rachel. So sent me away. She poisoned my food, made my mind rot, then paid men to drag me to the wasteland. Lies. Rachel shrieked. She's insane, Daniel. Look at her. She's a mad woman. And my son? The king asked, voice trembling. What happened to our baby? Nina pulled Michael forward. He's here. This is Michael. He was working in your own kitchen, under your nose, while you mourned him. King Daniel looked at Michael, walked closer, peered into the boy's face. He looks like my father, the king whispered. He has the mark, Daniel, Nina said. Show him, Michael. Michael rolled up his dirty, torn sleeve, showing the crescent moon birthmark on his upper arm. The king gasped, pulling up his own pajama sleeve. There on his arm was the exact same mark. It's true, the king sobbed, grabbing Michael and pulling him into a tight hug. My son. My firstborn. Rachel collapsed onto a chair. She knew the game was up. The birthmark was proof no one could deny. But Marcus wasn't ready to give up. His eyes were wild. He raised his gun again. No, Marcus shouted. I am the king. I've waited my whole life. I will not let a kitchen boy take my crown. He aimed at Michael's chest. Marcus, don't, the king yelled, trying to step in front of Michael. Click. Marcus pulled the trigger. The gun made a clicking sound. It didn't fire. Marcus looked at the gun in confusion, pulled the trigger again. Click. Click. The ancestors are watching, a voice said from the doorway. Everyone turned. Elder Solomon stood there, leaning on his staff, smiling. I told you, Prince Marcus, Elder Solomon said calmly. No blood will be spilled by a brother's hand tonight. I put a seal on your weapon. Marcus threw the gun at the wall in frustration. I hate you. I hate all of you. He tried to run past Elder Solomon toward the door, but the guards, realizing who the true villain was, grabbed him. Two strong men pinned Marcus's arms behind his back. Let me go. I'm the prince. Marcus screamed. Not anymore, King Daniel said, his face hard as stone. Guards, arrest him. And arrest her too. He pointed at Queen Rachel. Rachel didn't fight. She just sat there, weeping silently. I did it for you, Marcus, she whispered over and over. I just wanted you to be king. Take them away, the king ordered. Take them to the police station. I'll deal with them in the morning. The guards dragged Marcus and Rachel from the room. Marcus's screams echoed down the hallway until they faded away. King Daniel turned back to Nina and Michael, tears streaming down his face. Can you forgive me? He asked Nina. I should have looked harder. I should have known. It's in the past, my king, Nina said, holding his hands. We're here now. That's all that matters. Michael stood there, feeling overwhelmed. Yesterday he was a servant afraid of being beaten. Today he was a prince. He looked at his father, then his mother. For the first time in his life, he felt safe. News travels fast in a village like Riverside. By the next morning, everyone knew what had happened. The story spread like wildfire. The mad woman is the queen. The kitchen boy is the prince. Marcus tried to kill his father. Crowds gathered at the estate gates, singing and dancing. They wanted to see the miracle. Inside the estate, things were very different. Michael was in a luxurious bathroom, having just taken the longest, hottest bath of his life. The water had turned brown from all the dirt and soot. Servants, the same ones who used to ignore him, were now rushing around with towels and clothes. "Prince Michael, would you like the white designer shirt or the blue traditional outfit?" a servant asked, bowing low. "Just, anything is fine," Michael mumbled, feeling shy. "No, sir, you're the prince now," the servant insisted. Michael put on the white outfit. It was soft and smelled of lavender. He looked in the mirror. The boy staring back didn't look like a servant anymore. He looked regal. In the next room, female servants fussed over Nina. They washed her hair, combed out the dreadlocks, oiled her skin. They dressed her in a beautiful wrap of green and gold. When she emerged, she was breathtaking. The years of hardship had left lines on her face, but they only made her look wiser and more dignified. Elder Solomon came to fetch them. "The king is waiting in the throne room. The elders are here." They walked together down the grand staircase. Michael held his mother's arm, head high. The throne room was full of chiefs in red caps. When Michael and Nina entered, a hush fell. Then, one by one, the chiefs stood and bowed. King Daniel sat on his throne, looking 10 years younger. He stood and opened his arms. "Behold," the king announced, his voice booming. "My queen has returned, and my son, the true heir, is found." The chiefs cheered. "Long live the prince! Long live the queen!" Elder Solomon stepped forward, holding a crown, not the king's crown, but a smaller one made for the prince. "Michael," Elder Solomon said, "step forward." Michael knelt on the leopard skin rug. "Do you promise to serve this land with truth?" Elder Solomon asked. "To protect the weak? To listen to the poor?" "I promise," Michael said, his voice steady. "I know what it is to be poor. I will never forget." Elder Solomon placed the crown on Michael's head. "Rise, Prince Michael of Riverside." Michael stood. The applause was deafening. Outside, the villagers chanted his name, "Michael, the people's prince." King Daniel led them to the balcony. They waved to the crowd. Michael looked out at the sea of faces. Market women, mechanics, farmers. He saw Mama Grace waving her apron and crying happy tears. He realized his suffering had a purpose. It had taught him humility. Marcus had grown up in the estate and become cruel. Michael had grown up in the dust and become kind. The red dust of Riverside swirled in the air, but it didn't look dirty anymore. It looked like gold dust dancing in the sun. Michael smiled. He was home. The celebration in Riverside lasted 3 days. Cows were slaughtered, palm wine flowed like a river, and music never stopped. But while the village danced, a different scene unfolded at the city police station. In a damp gray holding cell, Marcus sat on a hard bench. He no longer wore fine clothes. His shirt was rumpled and stained. His shoes had been taken. He looked small and pathetic. In the next cell, Jackson paced back and forth like a caged rat. "This is your fault," Marcus snapped. "If you hadn't come up with that stupid fire plan, we'd be fine." Jackson stopped, glaring through the bars. "My fault. You're the one who couldn't wait. You wanted your father gone. I just gave you options. You pulled the trigger, or tried to." "Shut up," Marcus yelled, putting his head in his hands. The shame ate him alive. He thought about the look on his father's face, not anger, but disappointment. That hurt more than any beating. The heavy iron door opened. A police officer walked in, followed by 2 men in suits. Lawyers. Prince Marcus, one lawyer said coldly. Or should I say, Mr. Marcus? Your father has sent us. Marcus stood up, hopeful. Is he getting me out? Dropping the charges. The lawyer shook his head. No. The king is a man of justice. He cannot let attempted murder go unpunished, even for his son. You, your mother, and your accomplices will face trial. Marcus slumped back. Trial? I'll go to prison. Most likely, the lawyer said. But the king is merciful. He's requested your sentence be served in a rehabilitation center in the north, not maximum security. He wants you to learn, not just suffer. And my mother? Marcus asked. Queen Rachel has confessed to everything, the lawyer said. She told us about the poisoning 15 years ago, the kidnapping. She's trying to take all the blame to save you. Marcus felt a tear roll down his cheek. His mother was wicked, yes, but she loved him in her own twisted way. Tell my father. Marcus's voice cracked. Tell him I'm sorry. You can tell him yourself, the lawyer said. In 10 years. The lawyers left. The heavy door clanged shut. Marcus looked at the small window high on the wall, seeing a patch of blue sky. He realized he wouldn't see the red dust of Riverside for a very long time. He had chased a crown of gold but now wore a crown of shame. Back at the estate, the excitement had settled, but the work was just beginning. Michael, now Prince Michael, had a lot to learn. For 17 years, he'd learned how to scrub floors, peel cassava, and dodge blows. Now he had to learn how to walk with grace, speak to elders, and understand the complex laws of the land. He sat in the king's study with thick books piled on the desk. Across sat Elder Solomon, now his personal tutor. Again, Elder Solomon said sternly. What is the first duty of a king? Michael sighed, rubbing his eyes. To protect the land? No. Elder Solomon tapped the table with his staff. That's a soldier's duty. The first duty of a king is to listen. A king who doesn't listen to his people is like a blind man driving a car. I'm listening, Michael said. But these laws are confusing. Why are there so many rules about land disputes? Because land is life in Riverside, Elder Solomon explained. People fight over land because it feeds them. If you can solve a land dispute fairly, you can solve anything. Michael nodded, picking up a book. He was trying his best, but sometimes he missed the simplicity of the kitchen. Later that afternoon, King Daniel came in, looking stronger every day. Having his true family back was the best medicine. How are the lessons going? The king asked. He's learning, Elder Solomon said. He has a good heart, but his head is still full of servant thoughts. He tries to clean up his own plate after eating. The king laughed. That's not a bad thing, Solomon. Humility is strength. He turned to Michael. Come, my son. Let's take a walk. Enough books for today. They walked into the garden as the sun set, casting long shadows across the grass. Are you happy, Michael? The king asked. I'm grateful, father, Michael said. But I'm also scared. I don't know if I can be the king you want me to be. Marcus was raised for this. I was raised in the dirt. The king stopped, putting a hand on Michael's shoulder. Marcus was raised in the estate, yes, but he never saw the people. He looked down on them from his high window. You, Michael, you lived with them. You know what it costs to buy a cup of rice. You know how it feels when rain leaks through the roof. The king pointed toward the gates. A king who has never suffered cannot understand the suffering of his people. Your past is not a weakness, my son. It's your greatest weapon. Michael looked at the gates, remembering how terrified he used to be of the guards. Now they saluted him. I think I understand, Michael said. Good, the king smiled. Tomorrow is your first real test. The market women are coming to complain about the tax collectors. I want you to handle the meeting. Me. Michael's eyes widened. Alone. I'll be there, the king promised. But you will speak. Use your heart, Michael. Use your memory of the dust. The next morning, the main courtyard filled with women wearing colorful wraps and head ties. They looked angry, shouting and waving their hands. The tax collectors stood on one side, looking nervous in their neat shirts, carrying clipboards. Michael sat on a smaller throne next to his father. His hands were sweating. He smoothed his white trousers. "Silence!" the palace crier shouted, hitting a metal gong. Gong! Gong! The noise died down. All eyes turned to the podium. "We are here to listen," Michael said. His voice shook a little. He cleared his throat and spoke louder. "We are here to listen to the mothers of Riverside speak." A large woman stepped forward, Mama Grace, the head cook from the kitchen. She wasn't working today. She was representing the market union. Michael smiled when he saw her. It gave him courage. "My prince," Mama Grace said, bowing slightly. "We are suffering. These men," she pointed at the tax collectors, "they come every day. Money for the stall, money for security, money for cleaning. If we don't pay, they seize our goods. Last week, they took my neighbor's basket of tomatoes because she was short 50 shillings. The crowd grumbled in agreement. "It's true. They're thieves." Michael turned to the head tax collector. "Is this true?" The man adjusted his glasses. "Your Highness, we're just following the rules. The council set the rates. We need revenue to fix the roads." 50 shillings, Michael repeated. "You took a woman's livelihood for 50 shillings? "It's the law, sir," the man insisted. Michael stood up. He walked down the steps until he was standing on the same level as the women. "I remember," Michael said quietly. The crowd leaned in to hear him. "I remember when I first came to this village. I had no money. I was hungry. A woman selling corn near the post office gave me 2 cobs for free. She said, 'Eat, boy. Hunger is a bad companion.'" The women nodded. They understood. "That 50 shillings you demand," Michael said to the tax collector, "might be the profit from selling a whole tray of peppers. To you, it's small change. To them, it's school fees. It's medicine." He turned to his father. "Father, I propose we change the law. No daily collection. Let them pay a small amount once a month. And no seizing of goods. If someone cannot pay, we give them a grace period." The tax collector looked shocked. "But the revenue will drop." "The revenue might drop," Michael said firmly, "but the happiness of the people will rise. And a happy kingdom is a rich kingdom." King Daniel clapped his hands slowly. Then the chiefs clapped. Then the women erupted into cheers, dancing and singing Michael's name. "Thank you, my son." Mama Grace beamed at him. Michael walked back up the stairs and sat down, feeling tired but light. He had done it. He had used his past to fix the future. "Well done," King Daniel whispered to him. "You are a king already." That evening, Michael went to find his mother. Queen Nina was in the garden, tending to flowers. She loved plants. She said they were like people, needing care and patience to grow. "Mama," Michael said. "I did it." Nina hugged him. She smelled of earth and jasmine. "I heard. The servants are talking about nothing else. They say you have the wisdom of Solomon." "I was just being fair," Michael shrugged. "Fairness is rare, my love," Nina said. "Especially in palaces." She looked at the moon rising above the trees, a crescent moon, just like the mark on their arms. "Do you ever miss the wasteland?" Michael asked. Nina paused. "I miss the quiet," she admitted. "But I don't miss the loneliness. Here I have you. I have Daniel. My heart is full." "What about Marcus?" Michael asked. It was the first time he'd mentioned his brother's name in days. Nina's face hardened slightly, then softened. "I pray for him. I pray that the red dust of the north washes his soul clean. Hate is a heavy load to carry, Michael. Don't carry it for him. I won't, Michael promised. They stood in silence, watching fireflies dance in the dark. The storm was over. The fire was out. The kingdom was at peace. 3 months later. Time, like the seasons, has a way of healing the land. Just as the rainy season washes away the dust, the months that followed washed away the pain in the royal estate of Riverside. It had been 3 months since the night of the fire, since the mad woman returned as a queen, since the servant boy became a prince. The estate looked different now. The sharp metal spikes on the fence had been removed. The gates were often open, allowing people to come in with grievances or just to greet the king. The air conditioners still hummed, but windows were often open to let in the natural breeze and the sounds of the village. Prince Michael was no longer a skinny boy. He had grown into a tall, strong young man. He wore his responsibilities well, walked with a confident stride, but still stopped to greet the gardeners and sweepers by name. One Tuesday afternoon, Michael was in the royal garage, not driving, but fixing an engine. He loved mechanics. It reminded him of how things worked, how many small parts had to move together to make something run smoothly. Just like a kingdom. "My prince," a voice called. It was Thomas, the driver, looking worried. "What is it, Thomas?" "There's a letter for you, sir. From the north." Michael froze. The north. That was where the rehabilitation center was. Where Marcus was. He took the envelope, plain and brown, his name written in shaky handwriting. He walked to a quiet bench under a mango tree to read. "Dear Michael. They tell me I can write a letter once a month. I never knew what to say before, but today I woke up and saw the red dust blowing across the yard here. It reminded me of home. I'm learning carpentry. It's hard work. My hands are calloused. I used to think manual labor was for slaves. Now I know it takes discipline. Wood doesn't lie. If you cut it wrong, it stays wrong. You can't bribe wood. I heard about the new market laws. Mama Grace wrote to me. Yes, she writes to me even after everything. You're doing a good job, better than I would have done. I wanted the crown for the power. You use the power for the people. I don't expect you to forgive me yet. Maybe never. But I wanted you to know I'm not the same man who held that gun. The fire you escaped from, it burned me too, in a different way. It burned away my pride. Greet father for me. Tell him I'm finally learning wisdom. Your brother, Marcus." Michael folded the letter. He felt a lump in his throat. He didn't know if Marcus was truly changed, but the letter felt real. It felt like a start. He walked back into the house and found his mother in the kitchen, helping the cooks shell melon seeds for soup. The other cooks were laughing at a joke she'd told. "Mama," Michael said, "read this." Nina read the letter, her eyes softening. "Wood doesn't lie," she repeated. "That's true. Maybe there is hope for him yet. Should we show father?" "Not today," Nina said gently. "Today is a happy day. Let's not bring up old ghosts just yet. Tomorrow." Michael nodded. He trusted her judgment. She had walked through madness and come out wise. That evening, the estate hosted a small feast for King Daniel's 75th birthday. The king sat at the head of the table, looking frail but his spirit bright. He ate his pounded yam with gusto. "This soup," the king announced, "tastes like the old days. Nina, did you put the special spice?" "I did," Nina smiled. "Just the way you like it." The king looked around the table, at his wife, radiant in blue, at his son, strong and kind, at the empty chair where Marcus used to sit. "I have lived a long life," the king said. The room went quiet. "I've made many mistakes. I was blind when I should have seen. I was weak when I should have been strong. But the ancestors gave me a second chance." He raised his glass of palm wine. "To second chances. And to the red dust that birthed us. All. To second chances," everyone echoed. Michael drank. The palm wine was sweet and sharp. He felt a deep sense of peace. The storm was truly over. As the sun set over Riverside that evening, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Michael stood on the balcony of his room. He looked out at the village, at the market stalls closing for the day, at children playing football in the dusty streets, at smoke rising from cooking fires. He thought about his journey, from orphan to servant to prince. He thought about Nina, who had lost everything but found her way back. He thought about Marcus, learning humility in the north. He thought about King Daniel, who had been given a second chance to right an old wrong. And he thought about the red dust of Riverside, the dust that had been there when he arrived as a nobody, the dust that had witnessed his tears and his triumph, the dust that would be there long after he was gone. The dust didn't care about crowns or titles. It treated everyone the same, rich and poor, king and servant. That, Michael realized, was the greatest lesson of all. A gentle breeze blew, carrying with it the scent of jasmine from the garden and the faint sound of laughter from the village. Michael smiled. He was no longer the prince of red dust. He was the people's prince. And his reign would be a story told for generations to come. Wow! What an incredible journey from the streets to the palace. If this story touched your heart, smash that like button, subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Comment below. What was your favorite moment? Do you think Marcus deserves a second chance? Should we do a follow-up story about Michael's reign? Share this video with someone who needs to hear that no matter where you start, your past can be your greatest strength. Thank you for watching. See you in the next story. Folded Hands Crown.